Become a patron or a channel member here and get access to exclusive videos never released to the YouTube public, all the while helping us create projects like this. Come and join our pro staff. This video has chapters and timestamps all the way through it and in the description area with hyperlinks, so you can click on the part of the video that you need and you don't have to filter through anything else. We try to make this easy on this channel. Please like and subscribe and help us out. Hey pro staffers and tiny boaters, this is a multifaceted video where we install the bow plate, which got a little complicated. I felt it would be cheating you guys if I didn't include it. Followed by installing a Garmin Echomap 93 SV from start to finish, how I ran it through the entire boat. This is one of the most requested videos that I get, and seeing what's on YouTube currently, I understand why. So I'm going to give it a try here and give you my best shot. And also, we are going to be installing a Minn Kota Powerdrive, which is the cheapest entry-level trolling motor for the electronic foot pedal versions. But we will be supercharging this trolling motor with an aftermarket system from Pronav Marine that will put it on par with capabilities of the Lowrance Ghost, the Garmin Force, the Minn Kota Ultrex, iPilot Link, all those super trolling motors that cost $3,000 to $4,000. We can put this on and we can get very, very comparable results for less than a third of the cost. You can also run routes without fish finders. You can do it all on your phone. It's a really awesome system and it works fantastic. Alright, so let's just get the bow out of the way first because there's nothing else we can do until it's done. And because it's so short, we're going to have to start making holes inside the front bench. We initially thought that there was some foam in there. It turns out that it's completely hollow, which gives us the advantage to actually make it work because there's zero room once we actually put the panel on. There's about an inch clearance. We're not gonna be able to run anything under there without running holes underneath that bench to stick our hands through. We start by trying to use tube. That failed. So we used angle, which will have a slight advantage that we can bend up and it'll contour since the front tapers down from the back. So we put a million rivets in. We go ahead and do the same. We create a channel that overlaps the gunnels. And then later on, we're going to have to sand those down with a belt sander. Stay tuned for that. But not before we level this out first to make sure it all works. To make this level, we at least have to brace this part the trolling motor is going to be resting over with tubing. The rest can be fairly loose, like say 1/8 or whatever, 1/16 inch angle for like cross beams. It's the trolling motor will flex forever. 1/16 aluminum by itself is not strong enough. What I kind of want to do is I want to make a section that's really strong here for the trolling motor to sit and try and flex on, but also maybe a little hatch in the middle here to access if I need to access something in here. Like I could even make this storage. Or I really actually am thinking about putting a plastic bag in there and ballooning it up with pour foam, showing you guys how to do that. So we chose not to go through with the pour foam ballooning because the space in there is more important for routing stuff and making modifications. Plus we have enough foam in this boat to choke a horse. Not literally, but you know, like. Anyways, we are tapering the 1/8. We are sanding down the edges because it's exceptionally thick over the 1/16, and we have to run adjacent flat bar to level out the front. And we're gonna have to taper that down as well, so we're using a belt sander to do all that with pretty thick grit sandpaper. Aluminum sands pretty well, so not surprisingly. Now we are going to go ahead and use a .063 sheet of aluminum to crest the top. We'll have a few other under supports underneath it before we actually mount it, but right now we're just going to trim it out. And by the time we're done with this is thin enough to where we can bend it around that taper that we did with the belt sander, but also thick enough to where it's actually sturdy and it won't flex or it won't cause problems when you step on it. We're also going to be putting a few holes in where we know we're going to have to run wires and marking where we put the beams so we don't miss the beams when we go to drill, because we'll be covering this thing pretty soon. As you guys know, I went with the Minn Kota Powerdrive. It's the entry level of the entry level electronic foot pedal trolling motors that Minn Kota makes. I got this trolling motor because it's a first trolling motor for so many people, and then I found out that there is an aftermarket system you can put on this trolling motor that pretty much puts it on par with an Ulterra or an Ultrex or any of the higher end spot lock trolling motors like the Ghost or the Force. And after I found that out, that you can pretty much do it for less than a third of the cost of what it costs for the new super trolling motors, I totally wanted to show my audience this. But first we have to mount it. So we got a quick release system. Another reason why I wanted this trolling motor, because it's lighter than its edge. The edge is the other kind of cable steer, entry-level motor. I went away from the Edge because, for one, there's no good quick release system, and two, it's very bulky, and three, this one just seemed to fit with the motor specs. Sure, the trolling motor pedal sucks, but after we put the Pronav system in, that's really not a big deal. The bigger deal here is how the heck we're going to mount this system when we only have an inch to stick our hand underneath and grab it and move with it. I ended up figuring out that just wasn't going to be a thing. I was going to have to cut this panel in sections to get this done. It's the first time I've ever had to do that, where I had to cut it in sections or it just wasn't going to fly. So we cut the first section off, where I had that little hole and that little space underneath to try and put these massive screws and mount this block. It's really, really important because it's that tiny little block that keeps the trolling motor from flying off the boat. It took all but 5 minutes of redundant struggling to realize there was no way to do it like this. So we ended up cutting another internal panel right there just so we could mount the trolling motor, just to access it. So it's been a kind of a mess, and really it's because I'm dealing with the shortest little space here, because it completely sealed off this space. Pretty useless. Can't stick your hand underneath it anyways and have any sort of real, strong surface. So I have to rethink. I mean, we're just going to redo how we do it. We're going to do this in segments. We're going to T-frame it here, T-frame it here, give a nice little spot for like possibly 3 sections, and then we have to make a middle section to where we can access the wires underneath. I put this piece of bar here so I could stick my hand, because I can actually physically put my hand in here and grab wires and move them around, versus this angle where I can barely get nothing and mod or run through anything I need to do. So we'll see. The middle panel will be interesting. The reason I like 1/16 inch aluminum sheeting on the top is because you can bend it over with a hammer like so. Any thicker than that and it gets a little tedious, although it's not impossible. We go ahead and put 1,000,000 countersink rivets in the top, and I do mean 1,000,000 because countersink rivets, in my opinion, don't hold as well as panhead rivets, so you have to put more of them for them to be effective. Although we are not relying on the sheet itself for any sort of structural rigidity, it's just kind of a cover so we can have an actual cover for the plate. But it does require a lot of countersink rivets. Pretty darn fantastic. It is what I wanted to do. I wanted an entry port. I wanted to be able to move around. I knew that my general entry port to do everything here was nothing. What am I going to do with this little inch? Nothing. I have an overhang lip here because that's going to cover the foam that I stick in here. The EVA foam that I stick in there for the little groove. This will come over and give a nice clean edge over, and that's something I did learn from the crew. They taught me that. I never did do that, but it makes complete sense why they would do that. After all that mess was done, now we get to skin it. I suspect this boat will undergo a lot more punishment than the average boat just because of where I'm going to take it. So instead of skinning it with EVA foam, I thought about that. But then I thought about not doing that because we have Gatorskinz, which will pretty much take any beating we throw on it. It'll go out there and it'll just more or less stay the same year after year. It'll likely outlast everything else in your boat aside from the aluminum. So we chose, as we do usually, to make it the bow piece. So now that we have this all looking good, I left that middle section off purposely so I can indent it and then cut it out and then install it later on that piece once I paint it black. But right now, while that's wide open, we're going to go ahead and install the fish finder and the ram mount and get the wires running and the grommets going. Alright, so let's go ahead and cover just how we ran all the wires from back to front for the fish finder. We started by using these large rubber grommets that I found off Amazon, and they work fantastic. We had pre-built channels into this wall, so you're not going to see a whole lot of boats built like this. But if you've been following this series, or if you're a tiny boater yourself and you're building nice inner channels, you can run fish finder wires fairly seamlessly with no problems. So we made sure we did that. We ran them through the grommets and then through conduits that we ran in the inner channel walls that you see right here. We used fish tape to go ahead and get in there and grab the wires and pull them through, and once we pulled them through, we ran them along those aluminum slats. This wire with the orange interface is the transducer wire. You'll need to run that starting from back to front, and you'll have to tactically run it so you have enough room for it to clear the fish finder and also clear the back. And we are also running a positive and ground lead, which is encased in that white duplex cable. So, but it's running. I'm running power and ground wires along with that cable. So that's for that. Now let's talk about how we're going to actually install the transducer. You could do it one way. You could screw it directly into the hull and deal with what comes with that later, or you can use what's called a stern pad. We're going to use a stern pad. And so to do this, you need to clean out the hull. You need to find out exactly where you're going to place the stern pad. It pretty much is a giant HDPE block adhered to 3M tape. And to get the best adhesion from the 3M tape on the back of that pad, you're going to have to kind of rough up the surface of your paint. So I would get some painter's tape, block it off, kind of take that scouring pad and rough up the surface and break up the surface. Then it gives you an alcohol swab to clean it off, and just go ahead and clean it off to the best of your ability. If you don't feel it's clean enough, then you can use additional rubbing alcohol, etc. But I would just use that. Now you can see that there's definitely a much more brash finish to it. That means it's ready to be applied. And that's just what you got to do. You got to apply it. But make sure when you do apply it, only do it once. Do not press on that until you are absolutely certain that is a place you want. But once it's there, smack it, punch it, do what you got to do, because it takes 30 pounds of pressure to actually activate the adhesive. And once it's there for a day, it's not going to come off. So this kit gives you transducer platforms for both. It gives you one that attaches right to a trolling motor head, gives you the pipe clamp and the interface, but we're going to be using the rear facing mount interface, which you'll need that bolt, you'll need that rubber washer, and you'll need the nut that clamps into it. The nut fits right into the interface, the bolt goes right through it, and you want the rubber washer there, and you want to tighten it down, hand tighten it with just a screwdriver, and you want enough tension to where it actually folds. If it doesn't fold, but it also needs to be tight enough to where it doesn't shake. So loose enough to where it can fold, so you can fold it physically with your hand, or if it hits something, it will fold up instead of break off, but not so loose that it shakes. If it shakes, it will mess with your interference, and you'll get a lot of interference in the unit. It needs to hang just underneath the bottom of the hull. That is what is recommended with pretty much all fish finders that go in this fashion. So this is replicable for pretty much everything. There's only a few certain situations where you need to run it differently, and that's when you're running simultaneous transducers for much more complicated units. This one's pretty simple. But now we are back to where we left off, where we had just finished the bow plate and we were prepping to install the graph. People ask me all the time what the best budget fish finder is. A lot of people will say the Garmin Striker 7SV or 9SV. I would say the Garmin Echomap 93SV is, because it's UHD and it's fully capable for Panoptics, and it's ready for all that if you want to do it later. Might as well get a one and done fish finder. So that's why I got this one. This is the power wire to the fish finder, and it comes in line. Obviously the black's the ground, the red is the power, and these brown and blue ones are, I think, NEMA network connectors, but you don't need those. You can wrap these up and just kind of wrap them up in tape in case you need them again, or you could just clip them off entirely if you don't ever plan to run any sort of network. But I think these are just other network wires that if you're trying to run a multi-company unit where there's different units all together, you try to make them all sync together, these wires are that for. But I've never had to do that, and generally most people just run all one major unit and then let it sync up like that, like one company. Like Garmin stuff interlinks without ever running these, so if you're going to run full Garmin units later, you don't need these also. This comes with a 7 amp fuse. Sorry, this is a 3 amp fuse. These come with 3 amp fuses, and we actually have a 3 amp purple fuse inside the fuse wall where we link this all the way close to the battery, so we can cut this off. And we will try to run the ground lead similar, that way the wires are whatever they are. We will just fold these back. Actually, I'm never going to use these, so I'm just going to clip them right now. That is an option. If you know you're never going to use them, clip them. Get them out of there. It's just a waste. If you try to run a big connector plug with a unit right here, it always gets jammed and stuck up on something. It's a nightmare. So they send the extra piece afterwards. here's the packaging that comes in there. So don't throw this away. They're just, after you break the little teeth off, obviously you want to make it go the right way. Just sits right in that little groove, like so. And there, now we can screw that on. There. Now that's on. Let's connect the power wires. Additional stuff you'll need is marine grade connectors and some 10 gauge wire. I'm running 10 gauge wire because that's what is recommended from the forums on how to run units the most efficiently and get the clearest readout, because the UHD fish finders require so much more. And we are also using marine grade connectors. You'll have to get those. Do not use Romex and standard connectors from Lowe's. These being true marine grade and having that adhesive lining that melts in and melts. It's right there saturated around the core and it melts in. It's actually really, these Anchor Marine connectors are dope. If you need videos on how to install Panoptics and run that, or the Mega 360 for Humminbird, I have all those videos also in a playlist. But right now, let's finish up this bow piece so we get the trolling motor going. We still need to finish the wiring for the trolling motor. When you saw that conduit that was running all those different wires that we ran the fish finder wires up, we also had a set of 6 gauge Anchor Marine power and ground wires ran for this motor, all the way from the battery area up here to the bow piece. Now all we have to do is connect cable plugs. We need cable plugs because obviously it's a detachable trolling motor. If you have a permanently mounted trolling motor, there's no reason to run cable plugs. You would just direct wire it. It's a lot better for your trolling motor in the long run. But it works, power runs to it, and it actuates. It's all looking pretty clean, but we're not done yet. We gotta clean a few things up. First we gotta cover that bow piece. We used some EVA foam that we used to interior line the boat. We used it right there on the bow piece. And now we are ready for maybe the most exciting part of this, which is the Pronav Marine unit itself. What I did is I went and bought the entry-level drive, for Minn Kota. The Powerdrive is like their lowest end kind of electric steer trolling motor. And I bought it specifically to show you that you could turn this actually into a very, very good trolling motor with spot lock. You could turn a legacy Powerdrive, which is like $300 on, out in the market, or a brand new one, which is like $600 to $800 depending on the model. And then you can get what's called this unit. Pronav Marine makes this pretty dope system that more or less turns this standard Powerdrive with a very undesirable foot pedal, mind you, into a trolling motor with spot lock. And not just any kind of spot lock, really good, very comparable. In fact, a lot of people deem better than iPilot Link spot lock. It's very versatile. You can run it on your phone. You can get the optional controller. You can do it all. So we get to test that thing out. How sweet that thing is. Obviously, the lanyard is invaluable. We will be putting that on sooner than later, mind you, for sure. So that just plugs right in. This is pretty much a plug-and-play unit. This is a plug-and-play unit. So the pedal right in there to any. Normally how it goes is you just plug the foot pedal right into the trolling motor body and that's it. But in this situation, you plug the foot pedal into the Pronav Marine, which then plugs into the trolling motor battery, and then it has a power wire running out to go back to your power source, and then it has a wire that runs all the way up to the unit we were installing right there in the front. And you just run it inside the coil of the initial wire, that way it just stays hidden. You never know it's there. You pull that down, keep that right about there, and here's the unit itself. I mean, they give you a lot of cord, because remember, we shortened the shaft length, but if we had the long shaft, like the one that was a foot longer, it would have definitely enough cord to do it. All right, we're going in here. Connect this terminal to my trolling motor. Hey guys, if you've made it this far in the video, give us a like and a subscribe, and a comment and a share. Those 4 things help us trend in the YouTube algorithm and help us to be found by people. more than you'll ever know. Perfect conditions to test all this stuff, and we are way offshore. We're out here in the middle of the basin, arguably the roughest part of the lake when stuff does get kicking. We got an extremely shallow draft. I think the lake is actually low right now. Looked a little low when we were back there, and then really looking at it now, it's looking very low. Yeah, I knew you was there, bitch. Woo! Is this a stripper? No, it's a big ass bass. Oh, Lord, boys. I knew you was there. Oh, chill out, dude. Get a breather. Got you unhooked. Hey, he's not too big, but he's a fish, right? There's a fish. All right. No matter, dude. Without spot lock, wouldn't have got that fish. We're gonna be real about it. Ready for me, boys? That's a hell of a first fish. All right. I recovered from the skunk. I think that's a very, very healthy 3 or 4-ish. It's measured up on the bump board. 18 and a half. Sweet. Let's get back in the water. Nice healthy mouth on him. Her. It's likely a her. There she goes. It's a good first fish. All right, so that's what we have for videos that I haven't published yet. Obviously, we jumped way far ahead and went into the reveal, but this is how we got there. Now it's fine tuning because there are issues with the layout of the boat that we just wouldn't know until we tried it. I'll be talking about that next, how I would have laid out the boat and the changes I'm going to do to make it more fishable, to include possibly adding boat collars, which is, I think, a very, very requested video. And because this channel is all for you guys, we're probably going to do it. So stay tuned for that.